Welcome to The Blitz, a podcast from Coram Deo Church. The Blitz is all about tackling tough topics head-on at full speed. Are you ready? Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of the day it is that you happen to be listening to this episode. My name is Pastor John. I am the lead pastor of Coram Deo Church, and I will once again be your host on The Blitz. Today, we're asking the question, do Black lives actually matter to Black Lives Matter? Now, before I dive into this issue, some of you may be wondering, why are you going after such a sensitive and controversial issue? Well, let me remind you that the Blitz was specifically intended to go after difficult issues, to tackle them head on at full speed. And so today we will be doing that, knowing that this is a sensitive, controversial issue, but I think it's something that desperately needs to be spoken of. So here's the question: do Black lives matter to Black Lives Matter? I need to make a brief distinction before we dive in here, a distinction between the anemic statement. I say this because it just seems devoid of robust truth, but the statement Black Lives Matter, a statement that is affirming the dignity and the value of Black lives because all people are made in the image of God. They bear his image. They are created by him and possess an inescapable intrinsic value and dignity and worth because God made them. So we need to make a distinction between that statement, which is objectively, biblically, theologically, historically true. Black lives objectively matter. That is absolutely truth. And I say anemic because it needs so much. Just to say that a life matters doesn't say enough, but we're not going to go there. Just we need to affirm that statement as truth and make a distinction between that statement as the truth, between that statement and the organization Black Lives Matter, or what I'll probably refer to as BLM from here out. Okay, so we need to make a distinction between the statement Black Lives Matter, yes, true, amen, and the organization BLM. What a lot of people don't know is that BLM, it really was thrust into the national spotlight in a unique way over the summer following the death of George Floyd. And when you hear an organization that calls itself Black Lives Matter, or BLM, you initially want to affirm the organization because the statement is obviously true. However, whoever it is that's behind the scenes running and launching and organizing BLM, they're quite sneaky. And so if you had gone onto the BLM website, and this would have been just this last summer, that would have been 2020, 2021? I don't even know what year it is. This last summer, 2020, what you would have read on their statement page is this: we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure, right? And you go, what in the world does that have to do with Black lives mattering? Well, it has nothing to do with the intrinsic worth of a Black life, and it has everything to do with Marxist ideology, right? Their website, and you can go find old copies of this online. You can see that there were people who were trying to make excuses for this statement. But their official statement on the BLM website was about the Western prescribed nuclear family. What they're saying is the Christian understanding of family. That is the idea that family is a mother and a father together with their children. BLM wanted to disrupt, and they use other language like dismantle, okay? So BLM was an organization that at its core was so deeply committed to the destruction of the nuclear or the Christian family that they put it on their website. Now, here's something that was really interesting that happened. Over the summer, I think it was going into the summer, I have some contacts at Starbucks. And if you were a partner at Starbucks, you were not allowed to wear BLM garb. Okay, so no BLM hats, no BLM, shirts or face masks, because that nonsense was required. You couldn't wear any of that because it was too politically divisive. Now, I went in one day and I realized that all of a sudden partners were wearing BLM gear. And I thought, that's crazy. So I went back to the website and discovered that the statements about disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family, they were conveniently scrubbed. They were gone. They no longer existed. Now, do not be deceived. BLM as an organization did not switch its stance on the Christian family. They didn't change their ideology. What they did is they hid their ideology in order to get support from Starbucks. So all this to say, as we dive into this issue, you need to understand that BLM as an organization is a Marxist organization that is deeply opposed to the nuclear family structure. That is mother, father, and children, the Christian notion, the biblical understanding of family. BLM is anti-traditional family, okay? And we will come back to this later, but I need to say that on the front end. And if you don't believe me, just go ahead and Google some stuff. You'll see that it's true, okay? I want to talk now about the loss of Black lives in our country. I want to talk about Black people who are having their life taken from them in our country, and to kind of better appreciate or wrap our minds around numbers, we need a little bit of context. So if you go to census.gov, you will find that the demographic breakdown in our country is roughly 76% white and 13% Black. Okay, 17% or 76% white, 13% Black. Okay, so keep that in mind as we talk about the following things. In 2016, in the city of Chicago, there were 362 homicides. Now, that number is up this year, okay, for 2021. But in 2016, there were 362 homicides. I'm picking 2016 because that's what I found a lot of data on, okay? 2016, 362 homicides in Chicago. 75% of the victims were Black. 75% of that 362. 75% of the victims were Black. 76% of the offenders were Black. Now, we're talking about 362 murders in a single city in a single year. That number does not represent people being murdered in other cities around the country. That is just people being murdered in a single city, Chicago. Right? So 362 homicides, 75% of the victims were Black, 75% of the offenders were Black. I read one report on USA Today that provided two different numbers that were dealing with Black men who were killed by cops. So that 362 number was homicides. That was people killing people. That was not any sort of law enforcement involved. That was just people killing people. In USA Today, there was a report about unarmed Black men or Black men being killed by cops, okay? And in that report, there were, and this was in, I believe, 2021, there were two numbers that were given. The first number was 9, that there were 9 Black men that were killed by cops in the last year. And USA Today was pushing back and calling into question that statistic. They thought that number 9 was low. And so what they did is they said, we think there are 5 other instances of Black men being killed by cops. And so that number they suggest is 14. So without going into the details and arguing with USA Today, I'm just going to assume that their number is right, 14. Let's just assume that 14 is right. So in the entire United States, you're talking over 300 million people. In the entire United States, given the astronomical number of encounters that both black and white men have with cops, realize how many stops, how many interactions, how many pullovers, how many citations, that number is astronomical. Out of all of those, 14 ended in a fatal shooting. 14 ended in a fatal shooting. Now, according to Black Lives Matter, and the social justice warriors, those 14 deaths represent a systemic issue that requires the defunding of the police and the tearing down of judicial systems, okay? Those 14 are representative. They are a case proving their claim of systemic racism. However, nothing is said about the hundreds of black men killing each other in Chicago, right? And other cities around the world. There's nothing about those Black Lives mattering. It's only the black lives that are taken by cops, okay? Now, let me say something, because I know some of you are maybe cringing when you hear me say that. I am not at all insinuating or suggesting that the fatal shootings, that when a cop kills, specifically a white cop kills a black man, that those lives do not matter. I am not suggesting that at all. I do believe that there are law enforcement issues in our country, and I think it has to do with the abuse of power, and I think it comes from the top down. I think politicians get away with whatever the heck they want to, and that value, that worldview, that ideology, it just trickles downstream. And so I think in general we have a problem with the abuse of power. I think when you have governors making ridiculous mandates, that only sets the stage for those who serve under governors to also abuse power. So I think there is a problem there. But here is the issue I have. I want to be able to say that those lives that were taken, okay? Now, you have to understand sometimes there are situations where it's not murder. It's a cop defending him or herself. But I want to say those lives matter, but I don't want to say that and ignore the hundreds of other black men who have had their lives lost. Why does BLM not speak about that? Why do they have nothing to say about the hundreds of black lives that are taken by other black people in cities around the country? Why does BLM have nothing to say about that? I just finished doing a review of Jamar Tisby's book. Why does Tisby not say about this? Why does he say nothing about it? Okay, so chew on that for a moment. I'm going to go to the next topic, which is probably going to be even more controversial. I want to talk about abortion. Walt Blackman, I believe that he was is a congressman in Arizona. He said this: "The impacts on black communities are hard to fathom. According to the Guttmacher Institute," that is an organization that is absolutely pro-abortion. Okay, I'm adding this to the quote here. Okay, back to his quote. "According to the Guttmacher Institute, which generally supports abortion, in 2011, 360,000 black babies were aborted. CDC statistics for 11 show that 287,000 black deaths occurred from all other causes, excluding abortion. By these numbers, abortion is the leading cause of death among blacks." That same year, Dr. Kermit Gosnell, an abortionist in the Philadelphia area, was arrested. His arrest followed a raid on his clinic by the Drug Enforcement Administration. Agents were acting on suspicion that he had been over-prescribing oxycodone, But once inside the clinic, they were shocked to find female patients writhing on tables in a facility that was littered in feces from a flea-ridden cat that could roam free inside the premises. Dr. Gosnell was eventually charged with murder of a woman that had died from a botched abortion and for several live birth abortions where he had killed babies born alive. It is outrageous that it took a drug raid to finally bring the authorities to look at this house of horrors. You would think such a horrific occurrence would be a big news story. When he went to jail, the press gallery was empty. Kermit Gosnell abortion mill was in a black community. The news media did not care. Walt Blackman is a black man, and he is calling out the issue of abortion. Though the black community, as I said earlier, makes up 13% of the entire population, black women are 4 to 5 times more likely to have an abortion. 4 to 5 times more likely than a white woman to have an abortion. In fact, in New York City, I think it was, I read that more black children were killed and murdered through abortion than were actually born. Consider this, every year about 350,000 black children are killed. That's over 1 million black lives lost each election cycle. 1 million black children killed every election cycle. Why doesn't Black Lives Matter talk about this? Why doesn't Jemar Tisby, in his book about fighting racism, talk about this? Why isn't anybody talking about this? I was discussing this with a friend actually yesterday, and he made a comment, and I think this captures it well. He said, "Black lives don't matter unless they're taken by a white life. Black lives don't matter to BLM unless they're taken by a white life. Black lives don't matter to Jemar Tisby unless they're taken by a white life. Black lives don't matter to our media and our politicians unless they're taken by a white life. In order for a black life to matter, a white life must take it." Friends, don't you see the racism in that? It's just sickening. So what is the problem and what is the solution here? Okay. And this is when we're going to come full circle back to Black Lives, BLM's commitment to destroy and dismantle the traditional family. You have to understand that BLM not only does not have an answer to this because they refuse to acknowledge what's actually killing the black community, but the solutions that they propose only perpetuate the problem. I am saying that the solutions that BLM is proposing actually are only going to perpetuate the problem, right? Here is what nobody is saying in the media. People are saying this. There are black leaders who are saying this, but they won't get the coverage. They won't make the news story. Here is what is killing black America. It is fatherlessness. That's the systemic, that is the core, that is the fundamental issue. All of the other issues, all of the issues of violence and crime, all of the issue of abortion, all of that boils down to this singular issue, fatherlessness. 72% of black children are born out of wedlock, that is outside of marriage, and 60% of black children grow up in a home without a father. Compare that to 16% for white children. Some people will look at the data and say this is racism. Certainly racism exists and it does play a factor. But the primary issue and the primary challenge and the primary problem is fatherlessness. Any sociologist, anybody who studies youth crime and youth poverty and dropping out from school, all of those statistics, they will tell you the greatest indicator of future violence, mental health issues, drug abuse, poverty, lack of education, it is fatherlessness. When there is no father in the home, the children are being set up for failure. Am I saying that everybody who grows up in a fatherless home must fail? No, I am not saying that at all. I am saying the greatest indicator, the greatest impact, the greatest influence on a child growing up in this world, whether that child be black or white or Asian or Hispanic, the greatest indicator is the presence of a father. And until the issue of fatherlessness is dealt with in our country as a whole, and specifically in the black community, until the issue of fatherlessness is dealt with, these tragic realities, the realities of inner city violence, the realities of broken homes, the realities of drug abuse, and the realities of abortion, until the issue of fatherlessness is dealt with, these realities will simply just repeat themselves. And here is what kills me. This is exactly what BML wants. It's what they believe in. They want to dismantle the nuclear family. They want to get rid of the idea that a family is a mom and a dad with children. The reason they want to get rid of that is because they want to get rid of biblical definitions, because BLM, as an organization, is a Marxist organization that exists to destroy the family. Do Black Lives Matter? They absolutely 100% do. They absolutely do. Do they actually care to BLM? I think not. All right, that's it for this episode of The Blitz. Until next time, take care. See ya.